There is a specific kind of silence that follows a nuclear explosion. It isn't peaceful, it's a vacuum. It's the sound of oxygen being ripped out of the atmosphere. That is the silence I live in now. It is a silence I built, brick by brick, check by check for 5 long years. People often say that the opposite of love is hate. They're wrong. Hate is passionate. Hate is an attachment. The true opposite of love is indifference. But to get to indifference, sometimes you have to wade through a river of absolute, concentrated malice. I need to tell this story, not to justify myself. I stopped caring about the court of public opinion a long time ago, but because I need to document the anatomy of a betrayal. I need to explain how a man can smile while his entire existence is incinerated by the people he created, and how he can wait patiently for the wind to change direction. My name is Arthur. I turned 45 recently. I used to be a husband, a father, a member of a community. Now I am a ghost. And honestly, the haunting is much more comfortable than the living ever was. To understand the end, you have to understand the beginning, or rather, the illusion of the end. 6 years ago, my marriage to Vanessa dissolved. On paper, it was a standard, sad suburban tragedy. We had grown apart. We wanted different paths. That's the script we read to our friends at dinner parties. The reality was far more cliché. Vanessa had been orchestrating her departure for 18 months. She had a landing pad already prepared, a man named Julian. Julian was everything I wasn't. He was in high-end automotive sales, drove a Porsche he leased, wore Italian loafers, and projected the aura of a man who had conquered the world. I was an actuary. I dealt in risk assessment, spreadsheets, and the slow, steady accumulation of stability. I was boring. Julian was a thrill. We had 2 children, Ethan, who was 16 at the time of the split, and Lily, who was 14, when the divorce decree was finally hammered out. I made a choice that looked like weakness to everyone outside the room. I let Vanessa keep the house. It was a beautiful colonial on the edge of the lush green belt of our town. It was the only home the kids had ever known. I didn't want to uproot them. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment across the city, a place that smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner and loneliness. But here's the detail that matters. Here's the loose thread that eventually unraveled the entire tapestry. The mortgage on that beautiful colonial was in both our names. I had excellent credit. Vanessa did not. The terms of our divorce were explicit. Vanessa was awarded the property, but she had a strict 24-month window to refinance the mortgage solely into her own name. Until she did that, I was legally liable. I agreed in writing to continue paying 50% of the mortgage until the refinance was complete. It was a generous offer. My lawyer called it foolish. I called it keeping the peace. But 24 months came and went. Vanessa never refinanced. I sent a reminder. Nothing. I sent a second reminder. Silence. By year 3, I realized what was happening. Vanessa, maintaining her lifestyle with Julian, who turned out to be asset-rich and cash-poor, couldn't qualify for a loan on her own. She needed my credit rating. She just didn't want me. So I had a choice. I could have taken her to court then. I could have forced a sale 3 years ago. But by then, the atmosphere had changed. The air had turned toxic. You see, while I was sitting in my apartment writing checks for a house I wasn't allowed to enter, Vanessa was busy rewriting history. She wasn't just living in the house. She was building a fortress of lies. She told everyone, her parents, her sister, our mutual friends, and most heartbreakingly, Ethan and Lily, that I was a deadbeat. She told them I had abandoned them. She told them I had fought to leave them destitute. She told them the reason they couldn't go to expensive summer camps anymore wasn't because she was spending money on Julian, but because Dad refuses to help. She painted a portrait of a monster, and she hung it in the living room of my own house. The alienation of a child is a slow-acting poison. You don't notice it at first. It starts with a skipped weekend visit. Then, one-word answers to text messages. Hey, buddy, how's the game? Fine. Happy birthday, Lily. I left a gift on the porch. K. I attributed it to teenage angst. I told myself they were hurting, that divorce is hard on kids, that I just needed to be patient. I was a steady rock. Eventually, they would see that I was wrong. I wasn't a rock. I was a target. The turning point came when Ethan headed to university. We had started a college savings trust when he was born. It was a joint account, technically, but I had been the primary contributor for 2 decades. There was roughly $60,000 in there for him, enough to get him started without crushing debt. When Ethan enrolled, I received a venomous email from him. Not a text, an email. Formal. Cold. Dad, don't bother pretending you want to help with tuition. Mom told me the truth. I know you refuse to contribute to the fund. I know there's barely anything in there because you wouldn't prioritize us. I'm taking out loans, and every time I make a payment for the next 20 years, I'll think of you. Don't come to move-in day. I was stunned. I logged into the trust account. I had the login, but I hadn't checked it in years because I trusted Vanessa to manage the withdrawals for the kids. The balance was $4,000. I scrolled through the transaction history. It was a roadmap of Vanessa's new life, a withdrawal for travel that coincided with her and Julian's trip to Cabo, a withdrawal for home improvement that I later learned was a new deck for the parties I wasn't invited to, a massive withdrawal labeled emergency that happened the week Julian bought a new boat. She had drained her own children's future to fund her present, and she had told him I was the one who left the cupboard bare. I tried to show Ethan the statements. I printed them out. I mailed them. He sent them back unopened with liar written in Sharpie on the envelope. Vanessa had inoculated them against the truth. She had told them, "Your father is manipulative. He'll forge documents. He'll try to gaslight you. Don't believe his spreadsheets." Lily was worse. Lily was my shadow when she was little. We built tree houses. We read books. But Vanessa had turned her into a weapon. On my 42nd birthday, I didn't get a card. I got a long, detailed letter from Lily listing 15 years of grievances. She claimed I was emotionally abusive. She claimed I ignored her. She cited events that never happened. Phantom arguments, imaginary insults. It was like reading a biography of a stranger. "Mom is the only one who protected us from your narcissism," she wrote. I spent the next 2 years in a state of suspended animation. I continued to pay the mortgage every single month. $1,900. Click. Send. Why? Because I am an actuary. I calculate risk, and I look at the long game. I realized that arguing was futile. The emotional noise was too loud. They wouldn't hear me. I needed leverage that was undeniable. I needed a trap that was so absolute, so legally binding, that no amount of tears or manipulation could escape it. So I waited. I kept my receipts. I organized my emails. I built a file, a literal, physical file in a black leather binder. It sat on my desk, growing thicker by the month. The house was my ace in the hole. Legally, because Vanessa had breached the contract by not refinancing. I could trigger a forced sale at any moment, but I didn't want to just sell the house. I wanted them to feel safe. I wanted them to feel victorious. I wanted them to get arrogant. The arrogance arrived in the form of a text message from Ethan. It was 3 months ago. He was finishing college, struggling with the debt he thought I caused, and looking for an apartment. "I need $2,500 for a deposit." The text read, "No hello, no how are you, just a demand." I replied, "I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't do that." The response was immediate and blistering. He called me every name in the book. Useless, pathetic, a miser. He told me that Julian was twice the man I was. But Julian's cash flow was tied up in investments, a lie I recognized immediately. So I needed to step up. When I refused again, the tone changed. It became ominous. "Fine," Ethan wrote. "Be that way. But you should know, Mom is planning a big party for your 45th. She says it's an olive branch. She says it's time to put the past behind us. If you have any shred of decency, you'll be there. It's at the Sapphire Grand, November 12th. I knew immediately this wasn't a party. An olive branch doesn't follow a demand for cash. I smelled the setup. I called a few old acquaintances, people who were on the periphery of Vanessa's social circle. They were cagey. They sounded uncomfortable. Are you actually going, Arthur? One asked. It's going to be intense. Why? I asked. Vanessa is calling it a closure ceremony. She's invited everyone, the whole extended family, the neighbors, old coworkers. A closure ceremony. They weren't throwing me a birthday party. They were throwing a roast, but without the affection. They were planning a public tribunal. They were going to gather everyone I had ever known, stand me in the center of the room, and systematically dismantle my character to justify their own greed and betrayal. It was a perfect trap. If I didn't go, I was a coward who abandoned his family. If I did go, I was a piñata. I stared at the black binder on my desk. I touched the spine. I'll be there. I texted Ethan. I spent the next month preparing. I didn't buy a party hat. I visited my lawyer. We drafted documents. We notarized statements. We prepared a timeline of the mortgage payments, the trust fund withdrawals, and the adultery evidence I had never used because I wanted to keep it civil. Civil was over. November 12th. The Sapphire Gram was a venue designed for weddings, dripping with faux crystal chandeliers and velvet drapes. I wore my best suit, charcoal gray, tailored. I looked like I was in a board meeting, which, in a way, I was. When I walked in, the room went silent. There were easily 200 people there. My former in-laws, Roy and Martha, were there. Roy glared at me with a hatred that felt physical. Vanessa's sister, Clara, who used to send me Christmas cards, turned her back. And there, holding court at the front, was Vanessa. She wasn't wearing party attire. She was wearing a dramatic, deep violet gown that looked almost like mourning wear for a flamboyant widow. Julian stood next to her, looking slightly drunk, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. They had set up a single chair in the center of the dance floor, facing a projector screen. Ethan approached me. He didn't shake my hand. He pointed to the chair. "Sit down, Dad. It's time you listen for once." I sat. I crossed my legs. I folded my hands in my lap. I was the calmest person in the room because I knew I was the only one who knew how the night would end. The ceremony began. It was orchestrated theater. Vanessa took the microphone first. She spoke about healing through truth. She cried. Perfect, single tears that didn't ruin her makeup. She talked about the years of financial terror I had inflicted on her, how she had to scrape by to keep a roof over the children's heads while I lived in luxury downtown. The audience murmured sympathetically. I saw old neighbors shaking their heads in disgust, looking at me like I was a contagion. Then came the children. This was the part that was designed to break me. Ethan took the stage. He spoke about growing up fatherless despite having a father 5 miles away. He told a story about his high school graduation, claiming I didn't show up because I was too busy working. I had been there. I had stood in the back because Vanessa told me I wasn't allowed in the family seating area. I had cheered. He just hadn't looked for me. Then Lily, my sweet Lily. She had a PowerPoint presentation. It was titled The Void. She clicked through slides. Photos of family holidays with my figure photoshopped out or cropped. Graphs showing the emotional deficit. But the slide that drew gas was a financial breakdown. Tuition debt, $80,000. The slide read in red text. Dad's contribution, $0. She looked at me, her eyes wet with angry tears. You taught me that love is conditional on a bank balance, and you didn't even have a balance. The room erupted in applause for her bravery. Then, the final act. Roy, my ex-father-in-law, a man whose contracting business I had helped save from bankruptcy with free accounting work 10 years ago, took the mic. He pointed a thick finger at me. You are an eraser, he boomed. You tried to erase this family. But we are still here. And you? You are the one who is gone. You are nothing to us. Nothing. The crowd picked up on the energy. It was mob mentality. Someone shouted, "Deadbeat." Another shouted, "Coward." People I had known for decades, people who had eaten at my table, began to file past me. They didn't hit me. They did something worse. They dropped things at my feet. Pennies. It was a symbolic gesture. Here's the money you love so much. Clara, Vanessa's sister, walked by and spat on the floor, inches from my polished shoe. Julian laughed, a high, braying sound. I sat there. I didn't flinch. I watched their faces. I memorized them. I watched Vanessa, glowing with the triumph of her victimhood. She felt powerful. She felt secure. She felt she had finally buried me. When the noise died down, they expected a reaction. They expected me to cry, to beg, to scream, or to storm out in a rage. Instead, I stood up slowly. I buttoned my jacket. I walked over to Vanessa. The room held its breath. I looked her in the eye. She flinched just slightly. "Thank you," I said. My voice was level, quiet, but in that silent room, it carried. I needed to know exactly where we stood. Now I know. I turned and walked out. "That's it." Ethan shouted after me. "Run away. It's what you're best at." I didn't look back. I walked to my car, got in, and drove home in the silence. That was 3 weeks ago. For the first week, they celebrated. I saw the social media posts. Closure. Reclaiming our power. The trash took itself out. They had no idea that while they were posting on Instagram, I was pressing the red button. The morning after the party, I stopped paying the mortgage. I didn't just stop paying. I contacted the bank. I informed them that as a co-borrower, I was ceasing payments immediately and that the property was occupied by a party who had violated a court order to refinance. Simultaneously, my lawyer filed a motion in family court. We weren't just asking for the sale of the house. We were filing for a retroactive modification of assets based on fraud and the misappropriation of the trust fund. You see, the trust fund was joint property intended for children. By using it for herself, Vanessa had committed theft. My records, the ones showing the dates of her vacations matching the withdrawals, were impeccable. The first domino fell 10 days ago. The bank sent the notice of default because the loan had been mishandled for years, late fees that I usually covered. And because I flagged the account, they accelerated the process. Vanessa received a letter stating that the full balance of the mortgage, roughly $300,000, was due, or foreclosure proceedings would begin in 30 days. I can only imagine the scene in that house. She probably laughed at first. She probably thought, "Arthur will fix it. Arthur always pays." She called me. I sent it to voicemail. She texted, "Hey, bank made mistake. Did you forget to send the check?" LOL. I didn't reply. 2 days later, the tone changed. "Arthur, pick up. This is serious. They're threatening foreclosure." Silence. Then the second domino. My lawyer served Julian. We weren't suing Julian directly, but we subpoenaed his financial records as part of the investigation into where the trust fund money went. If he had benefited from the stolen funds, the trips, the dinners, he was potentially liable. Julian, the man who leased his life, panicked. Then the third domino. I sent a certified letter to Ethan and Lily. It contained no emotional plea. It was simply a photocopy of the trust fund ledger. I highlighted every withdrawal Vanessa had made. Next to the withdrawals, I pasted the social media photos she had posted on those dates. Withdrawal for $1,500. Photo, Vanessa and Julian at a resort in Maui. Withdrawal, $8,000. Photo, the new Lexus in the driveway. At the bottom, I wrote a simple note. Asterisk, I saved $60,000 for you. Your mother spent it. Ask her. Asterisk, the silence from my end was driving them insane. The power dynamic had flipped so violently they had whiplash. The phone calls became constant. 50, 60 a day. From Vanessa, from Ethan, from Clara, from Roy. "We need to talk. You can't do this. It's illegal." It wasn't. We're family. The irony of them appealing to family 3 weeks after spitting at my feet was not lost on me. Finally, they cornered me. They knew where I worked. I walked out to the parking garage on a Tuesday evening. They were waiting. Vanessa, Ethan, and Julian. They looked haggard. Vanessa's glamour was gone. She looked terrified. Julian looked ready to bolt. Ethan looked confused, like a child who had just realized the boogeyman was actually his protector. You can't just hide. Vanessa screamed, her voice echoing off the concrete walls. They're going to take the house. We have nowhere to go. I unlocked my car door, placed my briefcase inside, and turned to face them. I'm not hiding, I said. I'm just finished. You have to pay the mortgage, Vanessa pleaded. It's in your name, too. I know, I said, and I am willing to take the hit on my credit score. I can afford it. Can you? Why are you doing this? Ethan asked, his voice cracked. Why are you burning everything down? I didn't burn it down, Ethan, I said, pulling the black binder from my bag. I had brought it with me every day, waiting for this moment. I handed the binder to him. Your mother told you I was a deadbeat. Open that. He hesitated, then opened it. He saw the 5 years of mortgage checks. Copies of every single one. $1,900. $1,900. $1,900. I paid for the roof over your head every month for 5 years while you were telling your friends I abandoned you. I said, I paid for that house while you stood on a stage and called me nothing. Ethan flipped the pages. He saw the trust fund withdrawals. He saw the emails I had sent to Vanessa begging to see the kids, printed out with timestamps. He looked at Vanessa. You said he stopped paying. You said he didn't care. Vanessa was sobbing now. It's complicated, Ethan. I did what I had to do. He controlled us with money. No, I cut in. I supported you, and you stole from them. I turned to Julian. And you liked the trips, didn't you? The dinners? Did you know you were eating Ethan's tuition? Julian held up his hands. Hey, man, I didn't know where the money came from. This is between you two. He was backing away. The rat was looking for a lifeboat. I am forcing the sale. I said, the house goes on the market next week. The proceeds will be split. But first, the court will deduct the $60,000 you stole from the trust fund, plus the half of the mortgage payments I made post-divorce. By my calculations, Vanessa, after the bank is paid and I am reimbursed, you will walk away with nothing, maybe debt. I have nowhere to live. Vanessa shrieked. I'm a nurse. I can't afford rent in this town. Then move, I said. You have 30 days. What about me? Ethan asked. He looked small. The arrogance of the banquet hall was gone. I have loans. Dad. The word hung in the air. Dad. He hadn't called me that without a sneer in 5 years. I know, I said, and that is a tragedy. But you are an adult, Ethan. You stood on a stage and told 200 people that I was a ghost. You told them I was a failure. You participated in my execution. I was lied to, he protested. Yes, you were. I agreed, but you didn't ask. You didn't check. You enjoyed the anger. It felt good to hate me. And now, you wanted to fix it because the check bounced. I looked at all of them. I am not your ATM. I am not your scapegoat. And I am not your father anymore. You fired me. I got in the car. Vanessa threw herself at the window, banging on the glass. You can't do this. We're family. I started the engine. I looked at her one last time through the glass. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt weightless. I drove away. The house is listed now. The for sale sign is in the yard. The neighbors, the ones who threw pennies, are now whispering about how poor Vanessa was deceived by her boyfriend and how complicated the situation is. They don't look me in the eye when I see them at the grocery store. They look at the floor. They are ashamed, not because they were wrong, but because they were caught being cruel. Julian left Vanessa 3 days after the parking garage confrontation. Apparently, a woman with debt and no house wasn't his type. Ethan and Lily have tried to reach out. Long, tearful texts. Apologies. We didn't know. Please, can we meet for coffee? I miss you. I haven't responded. Maybe one day, years from now, I will. Maybe. But trust is like a mirror. You can fix it if it's broken, but you can still see the crack in that mother of asterisk curve's reflection. And this wasn't just a crack. They pulverized it. My lawyer tells me that after the settlement, I will walk away with nearly $250,000 in equity and reimbursement. I've been looking at cabins up north, somewhere quiet, somewhere with a lake. somewhere where the only noise is the wind in the trees and the sound of my own peace of mind. I sit in my apartment tonight and it's quiet, but it's not the silence of a vacuum anymore. It's the silence of a clean slate. They spent 5 years trying to turn me into nothing. In the end, they succeeded in a way they didn't expect. I became nothing to them, and by doing so,